Have you ever got yourself all worked up, pumped up, motivated to do something? Maybe it's lose weight, maybe get more organized, or maybe be better with your money. But then a few days or weeks go by and you lose your motivation and your drive, and you end up right back in your old habits. I'm going to explain why this might be happening and how you can change it forever. A lot of times we get an idea, we get a plan, something we want to do, and we plan it out, we think about it, and we get ourselves what's called motivated to do it, right? Everyone's telling you always need to be motivated. So you get yourself motivated, but it doesn't last very long, and all of a sudden your plan falls apart, it doesn't happen, it doesn't come to fruition, and you find yourself right back in your old habits. Why is that happening? Well, it's because you're lacking one thing. The thing you're lacking is discipline. What exactly is discipline? And what's the difference between motivation and discipline? Motivation is kind of what gets you started, but discipline is when something becomes a habit. You almost don't have to think about it anymore. You go to sleep, you wake up, you drink when you're thirsty, you eat when you're hungry, you need to get from here to there, you take a few steps and you walk. Your brain just acts and something happens. That is a habit. And we do that with all kinds of things. A habit for me might be when I get home that I have a key ring and I hang my keys on that key ring. I've been doing that for years. I used to do it in my room when I was a kid. I had a place, a little nail I tapped into the wall to put my house keys. When I got old enough to drive, and my car keys would go there. When I got my first apartment, I installed a key ring in the kitchen cabinet so I could hang my keys. When you are undisciplined, well, that's that person you know, and that person might be you. You get home, you put your phone in one place, your keys in another place, your purse in another place, and all of a sudden it's time to run out of the house because you got a meeting or you have to pick up the kids or do whatever you got to do or get to work, and you are running around looking for, well, everything. It's because you don't have a good habit. You are undisciplined. And we fool ourselves all the time by telling ourselves we're disciplined, and we come up with these ideas and these things that we want to do, right? And we say, well, I'm going to stick to my diet. But of course, we end up eating our favorite snacks. Well, I'm going to be more organized. Of course, you put things down in every room of the house. I'm going to be better with my money. But then payday comes and you want to do something and you end up spending your rent money. The thing is, we fool ourselves all the time. So how can we become more disciplined? How can we create better habits? I've seen a lot of people go into the military and develop really good habits and discipline. I mean, the military is known for doing that. They're great for that. Maybe you're a disorganized person, or maybe you don't even know what you want to do in life, but you go into the military and they kind of help you find yourself, right? When you're in the military, they're going to tell you when to get up. They're going to tell you when to eat. They're going to tell you when to exercise. They're going to tell you when to sleep. How and why is this? Well, the military is very good at organizing you as a human being because they don't give you options, right? They don't say, hey, listen, we're all getting up at 6 a.m., but if you don't want to get up at 6 a.m., you can sleep in a little bit. The rest of us are going for a 3-mile run, but if you get tired a mile in, you can start walking. Don't worry about your study times and your work times. You do it on your schedule. See, they don't do that. When they say something's going to happen, it is very routine, very regimented, and after a short period of time, you get used to that, and that becomes your habit. And that is developing a discipline. So the first thing is you have to cut out options. Cutting out options, telling yourself, hey, I'm going to diet, but I'm going to have a cheat day. Well, having one cheat day means that maybe you can have another cheat day, or maybe you move it. Maybe this week your cheat day is Sunday at the end of the week, and maybe next week it's in the middle of the week because your friends call you and they want to go out and do something. So that's going to be your cheat day. See, you're giving yourself options. It's the same way with our money. When you say, I'm going to save money, but then something comes up and you're like, I'm not going to do it this week because this came up and I'm going to do that. And I want to go away for the weekend and I'm going to be camping and I'm going to spend some money. So I can't save money this week. When you give yourself options, that's not like being in the military. There's no options. That's how you get discipline, is no options. So the first thing you have to do is you kind of have to take the options away and stick to what you say. So how do I do that? If I want to develop a new habit, a new discipline. How I've done it is threefold approach: mental, visual, and physical. Let's just say I wanted to be better with my finances. And one of the things that I decided I was going to do was create a budget. I don't have a budget. I never operated on a budget, and I'm going to have a budget now. So first things first, let's look at the mental side of it. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do a mental visualization. I'm going to start thinking, how would my life be better if I budgeted? Well, I'd have more money. Maybe I could save more and have more for my future. If I do that long enough, I think I could upgrade certain things that I've been wanting to upgrade, like maybe my apartment or maybe my vehicle, maybe a vacation that I've always wanted to take that I can't afford because I'm always behind. I'm always behind on my finances. So I would start to think, and I would do a mental visualization just about daily, imagining how my life would be better. And I know it would be better. I could see every way that it would be better. I would be thinking about this and I would be creating what's called a state. I'd be changing my state. So in my mind, I would be visualizing what's happening. It's almost like a meditation, if you will. And mentally, I'm seeing how my life would be better and different. So that would be the first thing I do. The next thing I'm going to have to do is bring it into the real world visually. So I would write down the budget. I would physically write it down on a piece of paper. But another thing that I might do is carry it around with me in my pocket, in my little black book. I might stick a note in my wallet, but I would probably put it on a poster board. I've done this with many things many times, and just stick it on the inside of my closet. So when I go in, my closet's like a walk-in dressing room, and while I'm in there getting ready in the morning, I would see that. Every single day, I would see my budget. That's going to keep me on my game. If I've allowed myself $200 a week for pocket money, that's for, things like maybe gas and food and coffee or a lunch out if I want to. I'm going to see very quickly how far that's going to go because I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it in my wallet. I'm going to take two $100 bills and put them in there and see how they evaporate during the course of a week. It's also going to keep me on track because when you tend to spend cash versus a debit card or a credit card, you tend to be more aware of how you spend it. And you actually want to spend less. You want to hang on to more of it. That's a natural tendency. All the statistics show that we tend to spend a lot more and we spend more frivolously when it's on a plastic card. So I want to pay attention. So that's one of the things I'm going to do to bring it into the real world is put a list and visually look at that list. The third part of this scenario of creating a new discipline or habit would be the physical aspect of it. So if I am budgeting, if that's what my goal is, then how am I going to physically bring that into the world? One of the things I used to do in the early days is every week, I got a check, right? I'm a independent contractor, a touring musician, entrepreneur, and I would get checks from customers. And what I would do is I would go to the bank. And instead of just depositing the whole check, I would cash the check and I would put part of the money into my short term. I know I have bills to pay this week and next week and next week. But I would take the money for me out. I would take the money for savings out or my POM and I would literally physically move it there so I could walk away with my passbook savings and see the money building up every week. Some people like to do this with the envelope system, right? So, in your case, maybe even if you have direct deposit, you would still go to the bank. You'd pick a day. You'd say every Saturday morning, I'm going to run over to the bank while I'm enjoying my cup of coffee and I'm going to extract $105 from my pay because that's what can go into my POM or that's what can go into my long-term savings. And I'm going to take that out physically, shove it in an envelope and put it in a drawer at home or put it in a safe. I always recommend a safe. Another game I used to play is when I cashed these checks, sometimes I would just ask the teller, do you have any rare currency? What would be rare currency? Like maybe 50-cent coins, dollar coins, or $2 bills. If they had anything rare, I would always buy it all because they never had too much. But they might say, you know what? I have 3 $2 bills. And I'd be like, I'll take it. But I would do that with dollar coins. I would do that with 50-cent pieces. And eventually I got to the point where that contributed a lot to my savings. I remember at my peak, I had $4,000 in $2 bills. And then one day a bill came up that was going to be a little expensive, and this was just money in my savings. But I had it. I could visually go to my safe and see that money, which was impressive. And it excited me, and it made me want to keep saving more and keep adding to that and building to it. And when I saw those dollar coin stacks, getting big, same thing. But one day a big bill came in and I needed, $1,200 to pay it. I think it was an insurance payment. And I said, let me take it out of the twos, take it out of the $2 bills. Well, you can imagine the surprise on the teller's face when you show up with $1,200 in $2 bills. But for me, it was fun. So I kind of made a game out of saving money. And what they gave me back in 50-cent coins or dollar coins or $2 bills, I knew wasn't going to go in my pocket for spending. That went right away. So I was doing something physically every week by going to the bank and getting this currency. I've got nothing against digital currency, except it doesn't teach people to save money. It almost is the exact opposite. When you spend money on a credit card or even your debit card, all the studies show, all the stats show that you just spend more frivolously. You're not paying attention. It's almost like it's not real. When you have your weekly money for spending, let's say it is $100 or $105 or $110 or $210, when you put that couple $100 in your wallet and the first time you go out and peel a $100 bill off to buy something that's $60, you feel it. When they give you back that change, you're like, oh my gosh. And you actually start to watch it. It's a change in your body chemistry and where you don't want to spend as much. Whereas when you're just spending on a debit card or a credit card, you don't feel it. It's why people go out with their friends and they just pick up the tab, or they buy that point of purchase item, or they overspend on any area of their life. It's because they're not feeling it. Of course, when they look that they're going to be late on their rent, or they don't have money to fill their gas tank, or they don't have money to pay the credit card bill that just came in, then they feel it. So there's nothing wrong with cash. There's nothing wrong with taking that weekly money. You are going to watch your spending massively if you do that. The point being, you have to get disciplined and you have to develop good habits. And the way to develop a habit or a discipline is to think about it mentally first, visually second, and physically third. Now, this doesn't just work for money, of course. This works for anything and a whole number of things in life. This just works in life to create a habit for almost anything. When I was younger and I began snowboarding, that's exactly the discipline I used and the system I used to create those habits. I had been skiing, and I remember after a day of skiing, I saw all these snowboarders flying by me, and I thought, that looks like fun. And it reminded me of when I learned how to surf. I learned how to surf in Hawaii, and I said, I think snowboarding's kind of like surfing, but on the snow, and your falls are a lot harder. But I said, that looks like fun. So I went home that night, and I remember laying in bed and being tired from my day of skiing, but I was visualizing myself mentally what it would feel like to be on a snowboard, and I thought maybe it's very similar to being on a surfboard, only you're going to be freezing and the falls are a lot more painful. But I said, I think I can do this because I'm a pretty good surfer. A couple days later, I went over to Barnes & Noble and I bought a couple of snowboarding magazines so I could start thumbing through and getting myself psyched up. Unknowingly, this was the visual part of it. Right now I'm like seeing pictures of guys snowboarding and flying through the air and hitting these little moguls and jumps, and I'm learning about all the gear, and I'm seeing about the different types of boards and boots. And it was the first time I'd heard the name Burton, and I just kind of got like consumed and was like, wow. And I started thumbing through those magazines every day. Finally the weekend came and I said, I think I just got to get on a snowboard. I think I'll be good at it, and I know it's going to lead to some form of enjoyment, but let me go and just try it. So literally I went to the mountain by myself, rented a snowboard, got on a lift, went to the top of the mountain, and that was a painful experience coming down with a lot of falling. But I had fun, and shortly after I decided to get into some lessons and really take it to the next level. But the point is, that was the physical part of it, just literally strapping myself into some boots and a board and going down the mountain. So I had applied all of these principles almost without knowing it. Mentally, I kind of envisioned myself doing it and thought about it and kind of meditated on it. I got the magazines, I visually looked at those things and spent some time reading and learning about it and looking at all of the terms. And then physically, I just went and did it. So I look at developing a new skill as, walking a tightrope. You know, discipline is the space on that tightrope from your goal to achievement. You're walking that tightrope, okay? And that's what it is. It seems daunting at first. It seems like it's going to be tough. Seems like you might even fall. But, you know, that tightrope is the space between my goal and my achievement, and I'm going to walk it every time. So mentally, visually, physically, put those actions into place. Realize there's a huge difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation will get you started, but discipline is really what gets you across that tightrope. My name is Daniel F. Margasa. You are watching the Almost Criminal Millionaire, and if you enjoy the topics of finance, money, and reaching your financial goals, then please like and subscribe for more.